The command line interface is used by a lot of people who use Linux to install software, administer their computers, and get things up and running. So if you're ever working with Linux, it's important to know at least a little bit about the command line interface. And we're going to be focusing on the command line as we go through Linux. Even if you're installing software, like if you're not working in cybersecurity, but you're doing stuff with machine learning, you're setting up a website, working with artificial intelligence, all that kind of good stuff, oftentimes you'll need to come to the command line interface to get some work done. So we'll learn a little bit about it. And I'm going to go over quickly how to access it again using the Amazon Web Services Learner Lab. So here I've launched my Learner Lab interface. I already started it. It's been running for an hour. It's doing some other stuff. And if I click that AWS button with the green light, it'll pop open a new tab with the Amazon Web Services Administrative Web Console for me. Again, we want to go to our EC2 service. There's a couple of ways to get there. Recently visited? Yeah, I recently visited the EC2 service, so it's there and recently visited. There's also a shortcut here in this bar right underneath the services. I could click that, or I can search and filter EC2 and find the EC2 service. So I'll just go ahead and click that one. They'll all take me to the same spot. And I've created my Linux and instance, so it's running right now. So I'm going to click on instances. If I click this, it's only going to show me the instances that are running. I only have 2 instances and they're both running, so that's not really a big deal right now. If I use this instances link over here on the left, it's going to show me all my instances, whether they're started, stopped, whatever their state is. I'll go ahead and click that link, because just in case you stopped your Linux instance for some reason, it should be running. Okay, so I've got 2 instances here. I've got my Ubuntu server Linux instance running, so I'm going to check that box. And I'll scroll over. I could have scrolled over first. You don't have to check it before scrolling over. But the status checks, 2 out of 2 checks passed. That means it's ready for me to connect, so I can go ahead and do that. So if I click connect now, making sure that my one Linux instance is selected, it'll take me to the connection options. We can ignore the warnings here. We're fine. It knows my public IP address. It filled that in for me. I'm going to be using the EC2 instance connect. The username is Ubuntu, which is fine. I'm not going to change that. Ignore other warning messages, and I'm just going to click connect. And in a new tab, I'm going to get my command line interface. So in the future, I'm probably just going to jump right here to start getting work done. Okay, so I can see I'm logged in Ubuntu at, and then my IP address. This is the private IP address that was set manually on this particular server. See some other information about hard drive, what's running. Users logged in is 0. I'm the first person logging in here, at least today. And it looks like there's a couple updates that can be applied. We won't do that right now. We'll do it soon. So let's take a look. This can be uncomfortable for people getting used to using a computer this way because it's less discoverable. With a graphical user interface, you can click around, you can explore menus, you can right click, left click, drag things, drop things. Here, we have to be really intentional about what we want to do, but we can still explore. It's just that the tools that we use to explore are commands that we have to type. So we're going to go over some of the most important commands here. So yeah, this format is user at the host. The host is my computer. We're logged in as the Ubuntu user. So if I write pwd, that's going to print my working directory. So that pwd is a program that lives on this computer that does one really helpful thing. It prints our working directory. So I am in the /home/Ubuntu directory. Notice that this is different than Windows. In Windows, this would be something like C:/users/Ubuntu. But in the Linux world, we don't see that drive letter here. Linux just does it differently. So just be aware of that. We don't have the concept of a drive letter here in this interface. So understanding where we are, like where we're working in the Linux system, is really important, because if we create files, we want to know where we created those files. So pwd is something I'll run very frequently. So depending on which type of server you're logged into, you might see a different home directory here. That's fine. I mean, computers change frequently. So if there's some slight variations in what you see, like if it's a different user, that's okay. Just know everything's going to be okay. One thing to note is that Linux is case sensitive. Windows, we could run pwd all uppercase, and Windows doesn't care about uppercase versus lowercase in our commands. Linux does care very much. So if I type capital pwd, Linux is going to tell me like, yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. Something to be aware of. There's no real right or wrong way to approach it. We just have to be aware. So I'm going to type pwd again. So I am in /home/Ubuntu. Great. I can change my working directory to go to a different directory on this computer. So I'm going to use cd to change directories. So I'm going to change directories to a special directory where configuration files are kept called etc. So I'm going to cd space, and we're going to use forward slashes here, etc. You can see my prompt changed a little bit. It shows me, so user at host colon, and then it's going to show me /etc. I'm going to run pwd, print my working directory, just to verify. Yeah, I'm in /etc. Sometimes here, it's not going to show you the full path of where you're currently located. So running pwd is just a way just to verify, like, yeah, I'm where I want to be. We can cd space /, that will change directories to the root. So if I run pwd, it just says, well, you're in the root. This is kind of like the starting point for all the files and directories here in Linux. The tilde is a special directory that refers to your home directory. So if I cd space tilde and hit enter, that will take me home. So you see my current location, it says :tilde. So if I type pwd again, it'll tell me I am in home/Ubuntu. So cd tilde is a quick way of getting home. If I cd ... and I run pwd, I am just in home. So cd ... takes me to the parent directory. So home is a child Ubuntu is a child directory in this case of the home directory. So I'm going to be checking my working directory all the time. So if you're following along, you can just verify that we're doing everything that we're supposed to be doing. So if I want to get to my etc directory again, I could do cd space /, and I could cd space etc. So etc is a child directory of my root. So I don't have to put the / here because that etc directory exists in this home root directory. So I'll type pwd again, and there I am in etc. Now, when we're moving around, we can use absolute or relative paths. What I did by saying cd etc, that was a relative path because that etc directory was relative to what my current working directory was, which was the root. No matter what my working directory is, I can always do cd space tilde, and it will always take me to my home directory. So it doesn't matter if I was previously in the root, if I was in the home directory, If I was in my own Ubuntu home directory or in /etc, if I do cd space tilde, it's always going to take me to the same spot, my home/Ubuntu. Likewise, if I'm here, I can say cd space /etc. That / is an absolute reference to the root of my file system. So it's going to take me there just in one command. If I cd tilde, I'll show you, I can't, and I run pwd, I can't say cd etc here. It's going to say, I don't know what you're talking about, because it would be looking for the etc directory as a child of my current home Ubuntu directory. So I attempted to change directories using a relative reference, but if I wanted to do this, I should use the absolute reference /etc. There are a couple of special characters. The period refers to the current directory. So if I cd dot, I'm still in my home. I can run that as many times as I want to. Cd dot. Nobody ever really does cd dot because you don't actually change directories anywhere. You're kind of just saying, stay here, and well, you're already there, so why run the command? But it's important to know that the period does refer to the current folder, because occasionally we have to run programs using the a period to say, yeah, run the file in this current directory. So it's important to know that period is this directory. Dot dot is the parent directory. So if I cd dot dot, think in your mind, where am I? Well, I'm in home, pwd. I changed directories. So dot and dot dot are both relative because they're in relation to my current working directory. All right, so good. We can list the file and directory contents using the ls command. Linux administrators back in the day, they didn't want to type out all 4 characters just to list files. list, no way. You get carpal tunnel syndrome. You got to run it so frequently. So instead, they made the command shorter, just ls. So we're listing files and directories. So when I am in my, so if I do cd/home, that's where I am, pwd. I'm in home. If I ls here, I see Ubuntu, and here there's a little bit of color coding. Ubuntu is in blue, so that it means it's a directory, so I can change directories there. There's only one user here, so there's only one home folder for Ubuntu, but we might have 5, 10, 100 different accounts on this computer. Each of them might have a separate directory in the home directory. Now, occasionally, you'll want to know who you're logged in as or what you're the prompt doesn't always show you, depending on a bunch of different factors. So the command who am I shows the current account that you're working with. Pretty straightforward. Depending on what system you're logged into or various configurations, it might be Ubuntu, that username might be ec2-user, could be Kali, or something else. All right, let's go to home. Let's cd tilde. We're in our home directory. And so if I run ls, there's nothing. Why is there nothing in there? It's pretty empty because we really haven't worked with this system very much. We haven't really created files. But lots of times Linux, it'll hide some stuff from us. The same way that Windows, there's a property to hide files if they're not really meant to be viewed or edited. We can show all the files with ls-a. And we can see we actually do have some stuff in here. Notice we've got the dot directory, that's the current directory. We've got the dot directory, which is our parent directory. Then we have a few files, so what do you notice that's common among all these files? Or some of them are directories, so we see the cache and SSH are different. They're in blue because they're directories. These all start with a period. So by default, if you list files just with ls in Linux, it's not going to show you stuff that starts with a period. It's a convention that Linux uses that can be helpful. This is displaying everything left to right. And it's only showing the file names. It's not showing us anything about those files. Sometimes we want to see more information. So we can list it in long format. So if we use ls, I'm going to combine two things. I'm going to do lsal. So it's going to show me the hidden files with A, and it's going to list them in long format with L. And then I can see a bunch of other information. I can see the permissions, all these RWs and X's, all that kind of stuff. That's the read, write, and execute permissions that have been applied to these files and directories. This first column, it's either a D or a dash. So the Ds are directories. The dashes are just normal files. I can see who owns those files. And you can see how big those files are. It doesn't give you any column headings here, so you kind of have to figure it out. But you can see when these files were last modified. And then, of course, the file or directory name. So very frequently, when we're working with Linux, we want to ls, cd tilde, where am I? I'm going to run pwd to know where I am. I'll list those files with ls or lsl. If I do lsl here, it's not that interesting because everything is hidden by default right now. Doing ls-al is going to show me everything with those file properties. So thinking about cybersecurity specifically, if we run ls-al, we can check the permissions to make sure that the right people have read, write, or execute permissions. If we're going to audit our system or take a look at these files to make sure everything is configured correctly, ls-l is going to be really helpful. So as a challenge, so here's some challenges. Navigate to the /var directory. How do we do that? Well, cd/var. How do I print my working directory? I'm going to use pwd. List the files and directories in a wide format. So wide format is the default, so I can just run ls to list it. And I can see the files and directories here. Navigate to the log directory that exists in the var directory. So I see that log directory here. I can get here, well, a couple different ways. I could do cd log, and I'm in there. That was a relative reference. Or if I'm going to cd tilde, here I'm in my home directory. If I want to jump right to that log directory, I can do cd/var/log. So log files, they're going to tell us what's happening on this computer. Many system processes that run or applications that run will report information, and that information will get stored in those log files. Print the name of the currently logged in user. So that's, who am I? I am Ubuntu. How do I navigate up one directory? So I'm currently in /var/log. Navigating up a directory is just going to put me in /var. I can do cd space ... And that will take me just into the var directory. pwd, there I am. Return to your home folder. I showed you one way, cd space tilde, as a little shortcut. If you just run cd with nothing else, just cd will take you to your home directory. It is important to understand and remember that that tilde does refer to your home directory because that comes up somewhat frequently when we're working with different applications and following instructions. Knowing what that tilde does is important, but the cd command by itself, by default, will take you back to your home directory. And then print your working directory. Again, same command, pwd. One of the most confusing things I found for people getting used to Linux is just knowing, like, where did I put that file? So I ran a command and I created a file, but then I lost it. And so it's important just to know what your working directory is when you're creating files and working with those files. pwd is going to be really helpful. Use cd to move up and down the file structure. If you don't have a good grasp of the Linux file structure at this point, don't worry about it. Everything's going to be fine. It might just look like a big mess of directories. Like, what the heck is that? Backups, cache, crash, lib, local, lock. Don't worry about that for now. Just know that you can navigate there. You can look at the files there. If you want to go look around, feel free. Go and explore. Use that spirit of exploration. But these are some of the commands that we need to have a good understanding of who am I, pwd, cd, and ls.